In this episode, we speak with Ashutosh Dekhne, Senior Partner and C-Suite Advisor for the Americas Supply Chain Operations and Technology at Ernst & Young Global Consulting Services. Ashutosh's focus is on delivering personalized advice to C-suite executives and is centered around driving meaningful, lasting, and step-change impact around growth, cost, cash and service performance. His areas of expertise include manufacturing, supply chain, logistics, omnichannel, procurement, and strategy, with innovative approaches in digital and advanced analytics and technology. Prior to joining EY, Ashutosh was a partner at McKinsey Company, where he held leadership positions for nearly a decade. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the Executive Chairman of Market Insight Media and Managing Partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Ashutosh, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Likewise, RJ. Thank you for having me.
I typically like to start off with a question which will really hook the listener into what your subject matter is, which is supply chain and technology. What do you think is a key area that companies are not addressing today that they need to be addressing as it relates to supply chain?
There are quite a few that they are addressing, but fundamentally, the new changes and the disruptions that are coming in, both from a physical supply chain perspective as well as from the pace at which technology is advancing, and the disruptions that we are seeing out there in the market, calls for a reinvention of the supply chain. It needs to have a different view of how the supply chain should run going forward versus incrementally improving bits and pieces of the supply chain. Right? Transformations, while many companies and several clients of ours call transformations, within supply chain, they're limited to a sub-function of supply chain. For example, somebody may just do a planning transformation or a transportation TMS implementation and calling it a transformation, instead of fundamentally changing how these sub-functions of supply chain, procurement, manufacturing, planning, logistics, customer service, R&D, if you go back upstream, how they all work in cohesion, in concert with each other. And so as part of that, how do you really take an approach that enables collaboration in the real sense versus tossing data after one group works on it to the others? How can this work? That is the mindset change that we are trying to drive at our clients.
And you've been doing this for a long time, meaning your focus on operations and supply chain. Can you point to an example of an engagement with a client that went particularly well? Maybe it reflects on this kind of cohesive strategy, comprehensive strategy that you're talking about.
Absolutely. So we were working with a consumer client of ours, and they've been engaging in transformations in the different areas of supply chain operations, and I'll use technology as part of that as well, for over 2 decades. And they hadn't seen a meaningful shift in their performance, despite taking on new software implementations, changing softwares, putting in new solutions in all pieces of supply chain. And at the same time, they also had their stock price was down, their margins were down. So there's obviously a lot of pressure on the chief operating officer to really get the margin that they think they should get and improve that performance, but also at the same time, be an enabler for growth that the supply chain supports in a meaningful way. And what we realized with them, and they made them realize, and they realized after 2 decades of transformation, that you really fundamentally need to change the collaboration between the functions within supply chain, like I said, and with finance and commercial. And to be able to do that, you got to start with first aligning on, they had for the same time period in question, finance had a forecast, commercial had a forecast, the sales and marketing teams, and supply chain had their own forecast. So when you have three different types of forecasts, your planning is going to be off, both in finance, in commercial, from a sales revenue perspective, top line, and then what you plan in terms of production, what you source, when you make, all of that. Inventory is going up. So we kind of help them look at this problem holistically across supply chain, finance, and commercial, and fundamentally ended up with a unified one data model for all of supply chain that allowed them to now stack hands that, yes, this is the right source of data. And we didn't end up changing a lot of the source systems because that would take time. Then it would have become only a pure play technology project. And they've been doing those for the last 20 years. So it didn't make sense to repeat another one. So we said, okay, right, you need to take a different approach. And so when we unified the data model and brought all these constituents on the same page in terms of what are you looking at? What is the reality situation on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as you plan? And then we enabled insights to be brought into each of those meetings so that they could make the decisions very fast, right there. And in some cases, even able to use AI and Gen AI to now automate, once the decisions are made, the execution of those. Because that's the shift we've done there. So instead of just getting real-time information, you run into a meeting with reports that I just produced now, but then you make the decisions based on that. But if it takes you 1 day, 2 days, 3 days to execute those decisions, that real-time information is already stale by then. So your decisions, by the time you executed them, are not based on real time. So how do you now enable execution of those decisions? Whether it be your sales planning, how do you change that? Whether it be your FP&A or capital planning with finance, or with supply chain, your supply plans, your production plans, your inventory deployment, all of those things. And net, I mean, we've now been working with them for about 14 months. From a cost perspective, we've been able to drive between 15 and 20% that they can actually see in their balance sheet on the costs that are controlled by supply chain. I'm not talking about SG&A and others in this case, while driving inventory down by about 11%. Right? So that's a huge capital gain, help that they got. In turn, what has this now led to is they have now the funding required to further modernize their supply chain, taking AI, Gen AI, and actually using this in a real sense at scale. And then with the cash, allowed them to kind of, now they're setting up, they just got a new plant approved, which they didn't have the funding for because of the debt issues and all that. But now they got enough capital to now fund a new plant, which they are desperately needed. So they're using this now for tech advancements, for new capital needs, deploying it well. And then they're also thinking about an acquisition. So, how do you really kind of take what could have been a small problem, you could have solved a little bit of here and there, or fundamentally reimagine how supply chain works for them.
And how much of that solution that you provided to the client was attributed to advanced technologies such as AI? Say AI wasn't in existence yet, or it wasn't at the stage it's in today, and we were 3 years back, 4 years back. How effective would your solution have been then as it is now?
No, this is a live example, live as in we are still ongoing, and we've gotten the results in the last 14 months. But a number of things that we have done, initiatives, have a big technology element. Okay. In some cases, it was configuring and leveraging the technology that they have. So sweating the asset, right? But making it go further than they have. In some cases, it was putting in new AI tools on top of their existing platform. It's giving them Gen AI capability that they can work beyond just using it for travel planning, if I may say. So actually making use of those technologies. Is it fully mature yet? Of course not. There is a lot of things that will come. And that's why I said at the beginning, technology advances will continue to be there. But it's how do you leverage right technology for the right task versus a blanket thing, versus saying, I know the answer is AI. What is your question? We say, okay, when and where can AI actually help you versus not? If there's some things that you can do with a robotic process automation, as we did in some cases, that works. In some cases, pure Python code works. In some cases, we needed Gen AI because we needed the decision makers to have all that information and the simulation available to them, which, by the way, the simulation runs on AI. But giving that information back to the decision maker is where Gen AI is where we're using it. So we're using a number of technology advances out there.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the benefit of the executives listening in on our audience, when they do use consultants, they hire some from the major firms. What is your target client set or prospective client set? Can you give us an idea of both the size of the organization as well as the sectors?
Yeah. So we serve clients across all sectors. So I'll answer the sector one first. Our primary sectors that we work with, and that's historical, that's now changing with growth and everything. Consumer, which means consumer retail, life sciences, healthcare, industrial, aerospace and defense, mobility, if you call it, and automotive and all of that. Energy sector. Energy is oil, gas, chemicals, right? All resources. So those are primarily the sectors that we serve, and we use supply chain working. Some sectors obviously are more for us because of our history, but we have a presence in all of them and a meaningful presence in a number of them. In terms of the scale, we've served a company that was 120 million in revenue. We've served startups with nothing and gotten them to a path where now they are, quote unquote, $1 billion. So we've been on that journey. So we serve clients across the broad spectrum. To us, serving clients is not about how much they make or what their revenue or sales is. To us, it is about, are we really solving their toughest problems, their complex problems? And does that give them the impact that they're looking for, no matter where they are in their $0 to $1 trillion journey? And in that process, are we able to, while driving impact to the clients, also give experiences to our consultants so they can learn a much broader capability?
You have a fantastic background and work with some of the best firms. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey when you started out in the field of consulting and what you specialized in then, and then the other firms you worked for and how your career has evolved?
So by background, by education, I'm an engineer. I did my master's in supply chain and operations research. I also did my MBA in finance. I started working on the shop floor, first with a tractor manufacturing company, then in an automotive big place in Detroit, and also in a banking corporation. I spent over 11 years with a third-party logistics company as well, where I ran their North American operations, sales to solutions to running the operations, the whole 9 yards. I also ran PepsiCo's global logistics and global operations, about $7-8 billion of spend for a number of years. And then in consulting, I started with a strategy consulting firm to really learn consulting the way it should be. Started really after all those experiences, still started at the lowest level in the firm, made partner in about 5 years. Throughout that journey itself, I helped build and I led practices globally. So I helped build the logistics practice for them, helped build the consumer operations practice, which is omnichannel operations, all of it, and healthcare supply chain. So I wanted to get different experiences, healthcare that is serving health systems and defining what good looks like and getting them achieve that good. Then as a transition from strategy firm to now EY, doing more reimagination, enterprise-wide transformations, more enabled by tech. Now as a senior partner at the firm, I serve clients across cost, cash, growth, all kinds of areas. Again, helping them solve the most toughest complex problems.
Thinking about your career, you were in operations at corporations and then or leading operations, and then you're also a consultant. Which do you prefer?
I prefer the consultant role. I would love to work in a company somewhere, but I think the pace of work that I have enjoyed in consulting, just the ability to see different situations across sectors and really solve the problems fast, drives personal fulfillment for me. And the only two metrics for me when I serve in a consulting world is, am I delivering something of impact every day to my client? And am I building the best experiences for them and for the people that are working on the engagement?
Excellent. We're coming up on time. I've got two final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Yeah, there's a mentor of mine who's been a mentor now for almost 16, 17 years. What I have really learned or still learning from that person is there's nothing in this world that should take anything away from the time that you need to give to your family.
Hmm.
And if there is personal peace of mind, everything else comes well to you. We wake up every day trying to make things better for our clients and for the people around us. But that should not take away the best out of every person.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these experiences, I give you more of the thematic answer, but some of these experiences are from when that mentor coached me from my day one, let's say, all the way, let me fall so I know what failure looks like, but then picked me back up immediately with the support I needed to get the strength and the capability. So even if I fall, I know what to do if I cannot prevent that failure from happening. In all of this, it was never just a professional type of a mentorship. It was professional and personal. And we'll always be grateful personally to that person.
Excellent. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I personally do quite a lot of work in Dallas area, especially with charity places, the Dallas Boys and Girls Scout Club, for example.
Mhm.
We work with Helping the Homeless is another charity institution I spend a lot of time with. And then we do quite a lot of work with the Salvation Army. Those are my personal ones, that I spend quite a lot of time. And then I support a school system in India where, for about $1 a day, they can get their food, clothing, shelter, education, everything. And there's some phenomenal people that have come out of that just in the last 7, 8 years. Phenomenal. I think somebody who's built their own startup. Startup is worth now about $500 million already. And so just incredible to see. And it's, again, I'm contributing a very little personal time and some monetary thing. So it's kudos to all those people that run these places because it takes some real strength and conviction and dedication, right? So it's really kudos to all those guys that run these places. I'm just a small part of that, nothing more.
Fantastic. Well, Ashutosh, thank you again for taking the time for this conversation. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, RJ, for the time and for having me again.